I finally realized something that completely changed the way that I look at everything in my home. And it has nothing to do with organizing or cleaning. It has to do with this one question. What happens to all of this stuff when I'm not here anymore? And once I really sat with that, everything started to look different. Because here's the truth. Most of us aren't overwhelmed because we don't know how to declutter. We're overwhelmed because everything feels like such a big decision. Every single item is something that we have to think about. It's a memory. It's a what if I need this someday? And after a while, your brain just gets tired from so many decisions. Because this isn't just about stuff, it's about your memories and the stories and emotions tied to the stuff. And that's why it feels so hard to begin. But there's a completely different way to look at your stuff. It's called Swedish Death Cleaning, and the Swedish word for it is dödstädning. I read about it in this book, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning by Margareta Magnusson. And I realized that I had already been practicing it long before I read the book. And maybe you're doing it too without even realizing it. And I know the name sounds a little intense, Swedish death cleaning, but the idea behind it is actually very simple. It's the process of going through your belongings over time and deciding what to keep and what to let go of and what to pass on, so that one day no one has to do that without you. It isn't about age, and it isn't even really about death. It's about looking at your home with a little more intention, because no matter what your situation is, someone will eventually have to go through your things. The point is to make that process easier for them in the future, but the best part is that it actually makes things easier for you right now. There's less to clean, less to manage, less to keep track of, and maybe the biggest one, there's less constant decision making. Because clutter isn't just physical, it's also emotional and mental. And when you start to remove some of that excess, everything feels lighter. Your home feels more peaceful, you feel calmer. And there's actually a line in the book that states it so clearly. It says, living smaller is a relief. And it really is. Not because you're depriving yourself or forcing yourself to have less or that you're counting everything, but because when you remove what is no longer needed, you're creating space for what actually matters. So even though it's called death cleaning, it has everything to do with life, making your life better now and making the lives of your loved ones easier later. In the words of the author, death cleaning is as much or more for you as for the people who come after. And that's exactly what I've found. Let me give you an example. My husband's parents passed away just 3 weeks apart, and they had a full house with full closets, with a full garage, plus multiple storage units. And I watched the family go through all of it, days and days and days of sorting through everything. And what made it so hard was that they were doing it while grieving, trying to make thousands and thousands of decisions about things that they didn't choose. And there's no easy way to do that. I love my in-laws, and watching that changed something in me. I came home and I saw everything differently. I remember looking around my house with a different set of eyes and thinking, I don't want my kids to have to go through that someday. So that's when I started asking a different question when I declutter. Not, do I use this or does this spark joy, but do I want the people I love to have to deal with this thing when I'm gone? Or as it says in the book, would anyone be happier if I kept this? And that question changes everything, because a lot of what we're holding on to isn't helping us now, and it's not going to help anyone else later either. There's a line in the book that says it perfectly. A loved one wishes to inherit nice things from you, not all things from you. Sometimes we think we're holding on to everything and we'll just let those who come after us sort it out after we're gone. But the reality is that no one wants your stuff. So you have permission to let it go. You don't have to keep everything. You don't have to pass everything down. You get to choose. And when you start looking at it this way, this process becomes a gift. It's a way of saying to your loved ones, I care about you enough to make this easier for you. And it also gives them the message, I want you to know what mattered to me. Swedish death cleaning gives you something that you wouldn't have otherwise, the chance to pass things down while you're still here. Not just the item, but the story that goes with it, where it came from, why you kept it, why it mattered, because otherwise those stories get lost. Think about what you have in your house right now. Chances are there are lots of things with stories attached to them, stories that only you know. And if something happened to you, those stories and those memories could be gone. But if you share the stories and the stuff in advance, when you pass those things on while you're still alive, you have more of a say in what happens to your stuff. You avoid family feuds over who gets what. You get to see people enjoying your belongings. You get to share the story that goes with them, and you get the peace of knowing that you have prepared for whatever may come. Otherwise, those items just become another decision that someone else has to make. And sadly, when people are having to make thousands and thousands of decisions, especially when they're grieving, there may be things that were precious and valuable to you that might get swept up into the donation box with things that mattered very little. When my great uncle passed, I inherited several beautiful hardbound family history books from his library. These books are more precious to me than gold. They contain hundreds of pages of information about my ancestry, where I came from, and who came before me. And I especially love seeing where my great uncle wrote his name on the inside cover of the books. I'm so grateful that these books were set aside for me instead of ending up in a donation box somewhere. In the Swedish Death Cleaning book, the author mentions cleaning out her mother's house after her mother passed, and she found handwritten instructions on some of the most special items, with her mother's wishes of what should happen to those things. She said, even if these small instructions were not addressed specifically to me, I felt consoled by them. I felt that my mother was there for me. So Swedish Death Cleaning can be like leaving love notes for those who come after you. And you might be wondering, well, what does this process actually look like? And how is it different from just general decluttering? The first difference is in the intention. General decluttering can feel like tidying up your space, or maybe like spring cleaning, getting rid of things, clearing out what's not serving you right now. But Swedish Death Cleaning is really curating your belongings. It's more intentional. Another difference is the pace. Decluttering can be done in short bursts, like in my 1-minute decluttering videos, whereas Swedish Death Cleaning is usually a slower, more gradual process. Sometimes it takes months or years. So there's a lot of overlap between the two, and whether you consider yourself to be decluttering or Swedish Death Cleaning, it doesn't really matter. Some of the benefits are the same. You get to enjoy a home that feels lighter and more intentional. And in both cases, it's best to start with the least sentimental categories. Save things like photos for later. Always start with the easiest things first, things like clothes and large pieces of furniture, things that don't carry a lot of emotion. You make simple decisions, keep or let go. And as you practice this more and more, it gets easier and you get more clarity. And eventually you're able to move into the more meaningful things, like the sentimental things and the keepsakes, with a completely different mindset. And when it comes to giving things away, that's where the intention really matters. You don't just pass things on to anyone, you think about where they're going. So before you pass something on, you ask, does this fit this person's life and their space? Do they actually want it? Because giving someone something that they don't want isn't really a gift. And this goes both ways. If someone offers you something that you don't have room for, it's okay to say no. That's not unkind, it's honest. And it keeps things from just being passed around from one home to another. Sometimes you will pass things on to someone that you know, and sometimes you won't find the perfect person. And that's okay too, because something meaningful can still have a life, even if it's not with someone that you know. When I was teaching my kids to declutter when they were younger, and there were things that they didn't use or love anymore, like maybe clothing that they had outgrown, we would let them keep the ones that were very special to them if they wanted to put anything in their keepsake box. And then everything else, we would give it a kiss and a wish. So we would make a wish that the stuff would go to another child who would love it. And even as an adult, I've used this trick to help myself let go. I look at the thing that I'm parting with and I imagine someone finding it at the charity shop or the thrift store or wherever I'm donating it. I imagine that person being so excited to find this treasure. And I imagine how they'll show it off to their friends and brag about what a good deal they got. And then I feel better saying goodbye to that thing. It's so freeing to let something go and to trust that it will go to a place where it will be used and that it will matter to someone else. So then instead of a loss, it becomes a continuation. And that's really what Swedish Death Cleaning is all about. It's not about death or endings. It's about things coming full circle and honoring ourselves and our loved ones enough to clear things out before someone else has to do it for us. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed or stuck, or you want to declutter and you feel like you keep starting and stopping, Swedish Death Cleaning might be just what you need. Not more rules or more pressure, just a different way to look at what you already have. And if this video has made you think about downsizing and you're wondering where to actually begin, I walk you through those first steps in a really simple, manageable way in this video right here. I'll meet you there.